Ready for another deep dive? Let's go. Today we're tackling social psychology, but we're not just skimming the surface. We're going deep
Deeper.
into your excerpts from, this is a big one, Advanced Social Psychology.
It's a fascinating field because it's not just about observing human behavior, it's about questioning how we question.
Right, like how do we even know what we know about human behavior?
Exactly. And how do our methods and assumptions shape our understanding?
Which brings us to the reproducibility crisis. Talk about shaking things up.
Oh, absolutely. It really exposed the vulnerabilities even in those classic social psychology studies.
You know, the ones we've all heard about.
Right, like the conformity and obedience studies from the 50s and 60s.
Groundbreaking stuff, but
Trying to replicate some of those findings today, it's been a challenge.
so what happened? Why is it so hard to recreate those results?
Well, back then, researchers had a lot more, shall we say, flexibility in their methods. Like, more freedom to make decisions about the study as they went along. Sometimes that led to findings that seemed more significant than they actually were.
Interesting. Because smaller sample sizes back then would have made those biases more pronounced, right?
Exactly. Smaller samples mean less reliable results. Think of it like flipping a coin. Flip it a few times, you might get an uneven outcome. Flip it thousands of times, things balance out.
Makes sense. So, this whole crisis forced the field to hit the reset button.
It was a wake-up call for sure. It pushed for stricter research practices, larger sample sizes. Transparency became key.
So less room for bias to creep in.
You got it. It's like building a stronger foundation for research. And speaking of foundations, let's rewind to the 1930s when American social psychology was just emerging.
What was the focus back then?
Well, picture this. The world was grappling with the rise of fascism. Prejudice was rampant. American researchers, particularly Floyd Allport, wanted to understand the individual, not just the group mind, like in Europe.
So instead of looking at the whole internet, they were studying like one website.
Exactly. This individualistic focus led to groundbreaking studies on aggression attitudes.
And those iconic studies on stereotypes at Princeton.
Ah, yes. Katzenberle's 1933 study, conducted at the prestigious Princeton University, no less. They revealed just how deeply ingrained stereotypes were, even among the educated elite.
You'd think at Princeton. But it just shows how subtle and pervasive bias can be.
It's not always overt. It often operates below the surface.
So were they talking about the same stereotypes that still resonate today? Or were they different back then?
You know, while the specific content might change over time, the underlying mechanisms, how we categorize and make assumptions about groups of people based on limited information, that's deeply rooted in our psychology.
Fascinating. It's like this underlying human tendency that's always there, but the way it manifests itself changes with the times.
Exactly. We adapt, but those deep-seated tendencies, they stick around.
Speaking of adapting, let's fast forward a few decades. What were social psychologists exploring by the 1980s?
Ah, the 80s. Disco was on its way out, personal computers were emerging, and in social psychology, it was the dawn of relationship research.
Relationships. So from conformity and obedience to the science of love. That's quite a shift.
It was a big one. They really dove into the complexities of attraction, the sting of rejection.
And of course, we can't forget about those brain scanning studies on love.
fMRI studies showing how love lights up the brain like a Christmas tree.
Incredible. It makes me wonder how our understanding of the self evolved alongside these changing research trends.
Well, the self has been a moving target for social psychologists. Early on, it was seen as this fixed, unchanging entity.
Like, this is who I am, take it or leave it.
Right. But as the field progressed, researchers realized, wait a minute, the self is much more fluid.
Fluid.
It adapts to social contexts. We're not the same person in every situation.
So I'm not the same person at a rock concert that I am at, say, a job interview.
Exactly. Think of it like different facets of your personality shining through depending on who you're with and the social roles you're inhabiting.
It's fascinating how social psychology highlights this inherent flexibility within us. But let's not forget the impact of culture. We are not just individuals shaped by our immediate social circles, we are also products of these larger cultural forces.
Absolutely. And as the field broadened its horizons, researchers realized that early work, especially on the self, was heavily skewed towards Western individualistic cultures. Imagine trying to understand the intricacies of Japanese culture solely through the lens of American individualism.
Like trying to understand the symphony by only listening to the violin.
Exactly. You'd miss out on so much. This realization led to the critical distinction between independent and interdependent selves.
Independent versus interdependent. That's a big one.
It is. The independent self, often seen in Western cultures, values uniqueness and self-expression.
This is who I am.
Exactly. While the interdependent self, more common in many Eastern cultures, prioritizes social harmony, interconnectedness.
It's not about one being better than the other, right? It's about recognizing that our upbringing profoundly shapes how we see ourselves and interact with the world.
Absolutely. It's about appreciating the diversity of human experience.
And how those different ways of being can actually be incredibly valuable.
Precisely. Different strengths, different ways of approaching challenges. It's all part of the richness of human experience.
It's like we each have our own cultural toolbox, shaping how we navigate the world.
And those tools, they don't just shape our social interactions, they impact our physical well-being too.
Wait, really? Are you saying that having a vibrant social life can actually lead to a longer, healthier life?
It's true. We often think of health as diet and exercise, right?
Right.
But our social connections, they play a crucial role. Humans, we evolved to thrive in groups. It's in our DNA.
So it's not just about feeling happy. There's a real biological basis for this.
Absolutely. Having strong, supportive relationships actually helps regulate stress levels, boosts the immune system.
Wow. So if social connection is like our superpower for well-being, would it be fair to say loneliness is its kryptonite?
You got it. Loneliness, social isolation. Studies have shown they can be as detrimental to our health as, like, smoking.
Really?
Obesity is a sedentary lifestyle. And it's not just about feeling sad or alone, it's the tangible impact on our physical health.
That's a sobering thought.
It is, but it highlights how vital social connection is for our overall well-being.
Definitely makes you want to pick up the phone and call a friend.
Right.
Speaking of our deep-rooted need for connection, how does evolutionary psychology play into all of this? Are we hardwired to be social creatures?
It's a fascinating question, and evolutionary psychology offers some compelling insights. Think about it. For millions of years, our ancestors lived in groups.
Relied on each other for survival.
Exactly. Those who were more socially adept, more likely to thrive, reproduce, pass on their genes.
So being social gave our ancestors a leg up in the survival of the fittest game.
Precisely. Banding together meant better protection from predators, more efficient hunting and gathering, higher likelihood of successfully raising offspring. Those social instincts, they're deeply embedded in our biology.
It's amazing how these ancient survival mechanisms still influence us today. But what about the not-so-sunny aspects of human behavior, like prejudice or aggression? Could those also have evolutionary roots?
It's a complex question, and it's crucial to remember that acknowledging evolutionary roots doesn't equal justifying harmful behavior.
Right, of course.
But evolutionary psychology can offer some understanding of the origins of such behaviors.
So are you saying that something like prejudice, for example, might have actually served a purpose in our ancestral past?
It's a possibility. Imagine our ancestors living in a world full of unknowns, potential threats. Being wary of unfamiliar groups might have been a way to protect their own resources, ensure the safety of their kin.
Well, less about hatred and more about safeguarding their own survival.
Exactly. Of course, in today's interconnected world, such instincts can have detrimental consequences. We have to recognize those ingrained biases, actively work to overcome them.
It's a potent reminder that we are both products of our evolutionary past and architects of our future. We inherit these ancient instincts, but we also have the capacity to learn, adapt, choose different paths. So we've covered a lot of ground here, from the historical roots of social psychology to this fascinating interplay between our social natures and our well-being. Where does the field go from here? What's on the horizon for social psychology?
Buckle up, because the future is all about big data and big questions.
Big data. What do you mean by that?
We're talking about harnessing the power of technology to understand human behavior on a scale never before imagined.
So like the motherlode of information generated by our digital lives. Social media, online activity, all of it.
You got it. Social psychologists are using this data to explore how we connect, form opinions, even how our online interactions translate to offline behavior.
It's like social psychology has been handed a giant magnifying glass to study the intricacies of human behavior in the digital age.
It's an incredibly exciting time to be in the field. For example, researchers are using big data to track how information and misinformation spreads online. We're gaining insights into the formation of social movements, political polarization, even predicting voting patterns.
It sounds like a goldmine of information. But what about the ethical considerations? With such vast amounts of data at our fingertips, are we crossing any lines?
You raise an essential point. The ethical implications of big data research are paramount. We have to be incredibly mindful of privacy concerns, data security, the potential for misuse. Transparency and responsible use are absolutely crucial.
So big data is changing the game, but what about those big questions? What mysteries are social psychologists still trying to solve?
One of the biggest is the age-old question: what shapes us into who we are? We're delving deeper into the nature versus nurture debate, exploring how our genes interact with our environment to shape our personalities, our life trajectories.
It's that constant dance between our innate predispositions and the experiences that mold us.
Precisely. We're also looking at the evolving nature of relationships in the digital age. How are social media and technology changing the way we connect, form bonds, and build communities? These are complex questions with no easy answers, but that's what makes social psychology so captivating.
It's like we're constantly peeling back the layers of the human experience, revealing new depths with every discovery. This deep dive has been incredible, from the historical evolution of the field to its cutting-edge explorations. What are some key takeaways we can reflect on?
One of the biggest is that social psychology is not a static field. It's constantly evolving, challenging its own assumptions, embracing new methods. It's a testament to the power of curiosity and the importance of questioning what we think we know about ourselves and each other.
Absolutely. And what's remarkable is how relevant social psychology is to our everyday lives. It's not just happening in a lab, it's playing out in our relationships, our workplaces, our communities, across the globe.
Exactly. Social psychology is happening all around us, every time we interact with another human being.
It's like we're all part of this grand social experiment, constantly influencing and being influenced by the world around us.
And social psychology, it's like getting a peek behind the curtain. It gives us the tools to understand the rules of the game, so to speak.
So we can be more than just players. We can start to understand the why behind the game.
Exactly. It goes beyond just understanding, though. It empowers us to make conscious choices about how we participate, how we shape our interactions.
And ultimately how we contribute to a better world.
Now you're talking. It's not just about observing human behavior from a distance. It's about using that knowledge to create positive change in our own lives and on a larger scale.
So it's about recognizing those aha moments, not just as interesting facts, but as like catalysts for self-reflection and growth. For example, understanding the power of social influence can help us make more informed decisions, resist harmful groupthink, even promote pro-social behaviors.
It's about harnessing those insights to become more conscious, more intentional participants in this whole human drama, and realizing we have more agency than we often think.
Absolutely. And speaking of empowerment, one area where social psychology is making incredible strides is in understanding and addressing social inequalities. Researchers are really digging deep into the systemic factors that contribute to prejudice, discrimination, disparities across race, gender, socioeconomic status.
It's not just about individual biases.
Right.
It's about those larger structures that perpetuate these inequalities.
So we're talking about things like implicit bias.
Exactly, those biases that operate below the level of conscious awareness, and yet they can influence everything from hiring decisions to healthcare outcomes. And then there's the role of stereotypes perpetuated through media, cultural narratives, shaping our perceptions and behaviors.
It's like we're uncovering these hidden systems that often operate without us even realizing it. But the good news is, by bringing them to light, we can start dismantling them and building a more just and equitable society.
Now you're getting it. And that's the ultimate goal of social psychology, isn't it? To use scientific understanding to illuminate the human condition, to challenge injustice, and to promote positive social change.
It's inspiring to see how this field is constantly pushing boundaries, asking difficult questions, seeking solutions to some of the most pressing issues of our time.
It speaks to the enduring power of human curiosity and our deep-seated desire to understand not just who we are, but who we can become.
Well, on that inspiring note, I think it's time to wrap up this incredible journey. We've traveled through time exploring the evolution of social psychology, from its early beginnings to its cutting-edge frontiers. We've delved into the intricacies of human behavior, from conformity and obedience to love and connection.
We've seen how this field has challenged our assumptions, broadened our perspectives, revealed the hidden forces that shape our thought, feelings, and actions.
But most importantly, we've seen how social psychology empowers us. It gives us the tools to understand ourselves and each other more deeply, to navigate the complexities of our social world, and to create a more just and compassionate future.
It's been a pleasure diving into this with you.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this thought-provoking journey. Until next time, remember to keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep into the endlessly fascinating world of human behavior.